Hi everybody, my name is Yvette. Today I'm going to show you how to work the double crochet rib stitch. A rib stitch is this stitch here along the edge of, or a border stitch that you normally would use along a border. This one here is a half double crochet stitch. You can check out my other videos to find that information and how to make that stitch. But today, this particular video is going to show you how to do the double crochet rib stitch. Rib stitching has a little bit of a 3D effect the way it's created. You'll see that it has these little rows like this here when you work it. And I use that on the border of these boot cuffs here. If you'd like that pattern for the boot cuffs, you can check out my other videos. I will be adding that one, so just check on my YouTube channel to see if it's there and uploaded yet. The difference between a single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and treble or triple crochet rib stitch, you can see here, single crochet is a lot closer in the ribbing. Then you've got a half double crochet, they get just a little bit wider apart. Double crochet gets even wider apart. And then your triple or treble crochet, the ribbing gets even wider apart. So there's a difference when you work the different stitches. And then I'll show you the difference between your ribbing double crochet and your standard double crochet stitch. This is just a standard double crochet stitch here. You'll see it's a flat stitch. It doesn't have the ribbing like this one. But the double crochet stitch is just a variation that causes this ribbing to be created. So let's get started on working on that. I'm going to use a size J crochet hook today. If you have not watched my other videos or you're not familiar with how to do a regular double crochet, basic double crochet stitch, just check out my other videos and practice that first. And I'm just going to go ahead and I'll go ahead and create our foundation chain now. This information is also available on a very quick video tutorial on my YouTube channel, along with this adjustable slip knot that I'm creating right now to start our foundation chain row. I'm just going to be practicing today with a series of 8 stitches, so I'm going to create 8 chains on my hook here. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now I'm going to chain these fairly loose. I don't want them really overly tight because it will pucker that first row and it just kind of looks funny, and then when you sew them together to create a circle, it just puckers up and it doesn't look attractive. As you work your double crochet, make sure that you keep your chain straight and you're working in the first row and not getting these rows this row twisted as you're working this row. It's as you're also probably familiar with, when you create a double crochet, you're going to add 3 extra stitches, which are 3 extra chains at the end of your row. So I've created 8 chains here. I'm going to create 3 additional chains, 1, 2, and 3, at the end of each row when I complete it, and this beginning foundation row. Those extra 3 chains are for turning your work, so that when you work and take your crochet hook and work into that first stitch, your double crochet is going to be about this deep. So you want to have that extra space, these extra turning chains, sort of like a ladder, and I'll show you that in just a moment. So since we have the extra 3 chains, we're going to skip 1, 2, 3 chains, and we're going to work into that 4th chain. Again, you may want to go ahead and just watch my YouTube video on how to do a double crochet stitch, the basic stitch, if you're not familiar with that. So we're just going to yarn over, we're going to skip 1, 2, 3, work into the top of that 4th chain, and we're going to do our double crochet stitch. Now this first row is going to be double crochet across the whole thing before we start working our actual double crochet rib stitch. So I'm just going to go ahead and double crochet into that next chain, and in each one across you'll see here's those 3 extra chains at the end that we created and we skipped over. And if we didn't have those there, this would be all scrunched down like this here, and our row would look like it comes to a point, which we do not want. We want this to stay nice and straight and even on the edge so that it's the same width as the rest of the row. So now I'm going to just keep working my double crochets into each of these chains, 1 double crochet into each chain. And I'm not going to work these overly tight either. I'm not a real tight crocheter, although I don't crochet super loose either. I kind of like to stay in the middle. Again, we're just working a double crochet into each of the chains across the row of our initial chain row. And you'll probably want to just be a little bit familiar with basic crochet stitches before you move on to this one. And here's our last one. Okay, so here's what our first row is going to look like. It's just going to be a row of double crochets all across. So now we're going to do the same thing we did at the beginning of this row. We're going to create an additional 3 chains for our turning space. 1, 2, and 3, and we're going to skip those stitches. Now what we're going to do is, since we worked in this direction, we're just going to flip our work over and we're going to work back down the chain, back down our row in this manner. Normally when you're working a standard or basic double crochet, you're working into these stitches from the front. So you would take your crochet hook and push and work it in this way so you go through both layers. With your rib stitch, it's going to be a little different to create that 3D effect. So what we're going to do is we're going to work our double crochet into the back portion of that rib stitch. So here's your rib stitch from the front. When you normally you would put your hook through in this fashion through both of those layers for a standard or basic double crochet. Rib stitch, we're going to go ahead and wrap our yarn around one time, yarn over once as we would a regular standard double crochet, skipping these additional 3 chains, and we're going to go into the back yarn. So if we tip our work up like this here, you're going to see the 2 front and back, front and back, front and back across the whole thing. So we're just going to work into the back yarn here, and we're just going to do a double crochet stitch into that back chain. Okay, so we're going to do it again. We're going to we just worked the first one, so now we're going to, instead of going into the front, we're going to tip it sideways and we're going to go into that back yarn, and we're going to work a standard double crochet again. We're going to do that all the way to the end, working into the back. Here's our third one. Here's our fourth one. Five. Six. Seven. And our last one. Now the last one, actually, let me just count these. Okay. So our last one is going to be this one, oops, right here. From the front it's going to look, or the side it's going to look a little funny. It's going to be a little more difficult in that last stitch to see the front and the back because it sort of curves with this 3 stitches here on the end. So you just want to make sure you're picking up the correct stitch here on the end and working your double crochet into that last stitch. Okay, so there's one row of our double crochet rib stitch. You'll see that it's now forming the ribs that are sort of a 3D effect on this pattern. So now we're going to go ahead and I'll just start the next row for you to show you how to turn it. Again, you're at the end of the row, so you're going to create that additional 3 chains for turning. We're just going to turn our work over. We're going to start working back down the row. Again, we're going to skip these 3 chains we just created for turning, and we're going to work into this next stitch right here, that first stitch. And you're just going to continue counting as you work these stitches. Now you definitely want to make sure you count them. It's easy to get lost in the count when you get to the edges, because on your double crochet it tends to give a little bit of an edging here. It doesn't seem to stay as straight as a single crochet or half double crochet. It tends to get this little bumpy edge on here. So you always want to count your stitches as you're working them to make sure if you started with 8 and you want to continue working with 8 that you keep counting your stitches as you do it. Otherwise your work will start narrowing and narrowing. It'll just start off wider and get narrower and narrower if you're not counting and you lose track. So just make sure you're always counting your stitches across each row you do to make sure you stay with your 8 stitches or however many stitches you choose. Your double crochet rib stitch can be worked in any number of stitches across, even or odd. Just remember to always add the 3 extra stitches for turning or 3 extra chains for turning at the end of your row. If you have any questions, please email me at YvetteMariesFineArt@gmail.com, or you can leave a comment below and I will answer you as quickly as possible. I will leave that email address in the description section below. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.